Thanks for staying with us. Former President Jacob Zuma's lawyers will head to court on Tuesday in an attempt to overturn the judgment that set aside Zuma's medical parole. This was confirmed by the Jacob Zuma Foundation yesterday. There's been mixed reaction to the court's decision, which some fear may fuel instability in some parts of the country. Let's look at how these developments and others could impact the political arena. We speak now to political analyst Sandile Swana. Swana, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, last week especially, they were hoping to persuade the mother body to support their decision to join the former president's appeal matter. And they were talking about how unfair this ruling has been on the former president. Now, looking at the NEC statement yesterday that came out, it says it notes the judgment and it's also calling for legal processes to be allowed to take their course, but says that it's going to remain seized with this particular matter. Does it look like, when you read that statement and some of the developments in the public arena, does it look like they could back the decision or the request by the KwaZulu-Natal ANC?
I have serious doubts that the NEC or the ANC at a national level will support this, for the simple reason that it could make the ANC appear to be undermining the independence of the judiciary. So for that reason, I don't think they'll support it. And the ANC in KZN is probably going to want to join this action for the wrong reasons, exactly the ones that the ANC NEC is objecting to, which is that do not interfere with the judicial process. Let it be free and fair and independent.
So does the argument then by the provincial secretary, Mdumiseni Ntuli, that this matter was brought to the courts by the Democratic Alliance for political reasons also hold water? Because they say that that is pretty much the reason they now want to get involved, because it was brought to the courts by a political party.
By the way, the DA is a registered entity. So it could have been a company, it could have been an NGO. It's a registered entity. It has got legal capacity to act. So not everything that is done by, for instance, the DA or done by a registered company like Pick n Pay is political, let's put it that way. So the DA is able to take legal action which is not political. Pick n Pay can take legal action challenging the government or challenging somebody else about that, and that doesn't mean that they are now being political at all. A legal process is a legal process, and it's a constitutional right of everybody to take legal action.
Now, when one looks at, I know you say that, of course, for, the concern of judicial independence, which is really what has been of great concern here, but also a decision like this one not to get involved with this particular matter or to get involved is always going to be very difficult for the ANC to try and navigate, especially given the divisions that have become very apparent in recent years, because you please one, the other becomes upset. So talk to us about the internal dynamics that could be at play now if they decide to go either way.
I think that we need to paint the historical picture here clearly. The conflict that we have today, all of us, inside the ANC and outside of the ANC, was that at a certain point, especially starting around 2005, the top leadership structure of the ANC, involving the likes of Gwede Mantashe, Kgalema Motlanthe, and many others, decided to use politics to make judicial decisions and decisions that would actually undermine the justice cluster or the security cluster, so to speak. One of those decisions was to close the Scorpions. One of those decisions, which was made by the ANC, is to stop the prosecution of Jacob Zuma. So basically, the conflict today is about whether you are going to use the ANC as a bulldozing instrument to undermine the processes of justice. That is where the conflict is, and that conflict is not new, it is old. It is the type of conflict that got Mbeki kicked out of power. It is the type of conflict that got Pikoli kicked out of power, etc., etc., etc.
So listening to what you're saying then, those that are saying the party is deferring once again, as much as this move has not yet been okayed and we don't know if the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is going to join this particular appeal, it sounds to me like from what I'm hearing from you, those that are arguing that the governing party may be avoiding to deal with internal matters, but instead now want to defer them to the court. Am I hearing you correctly that that is what you're possibly saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that the ANC has had criminals operating inside the ANC. And the leadership of the ANC previously decided to protect those criminals from prosecution, which is why Zuma never went to jail up until now, which is why Pikoli was fired as of today. So if there's an internal issue in the ANC, it is the issue about whether the ANC should be a vehicle for protecting criminals and suspects who are members of the ANC, including senior members of the ANC, versus allowing every person, including members of the ANC, to face the law like every other citizen. That is not differing. If, for instance, a member of the ANC murders someone, they must face the law similar to me murdering someone. It's not a party political matter and a domestic issue of the ANC. Once you commit a crime, there's a conflict between you and the state. It's not a branch level fight. It's not an NEC fight. It is between you and the state.
Now, I wonder then, especially when they talk about how they will continue listening to, and reading that NEC statement, they say that they're going to continue being seized with this particular matter, but they would like for it to then continue and allow the court processes to continue. Looking at the dynamics of KwaZulu-Natal, how do you think this decision is going to be received?
This decision... the decision of the ANC at a national level is going to be seen as another betrayal of Zuma from a political point of view, that the ANC is handing Zuma over to the dogs of justice to deal with him. That is going to be the issue. And all sorts of concocted and far-fetched political arguments are going to be actually advanced. For instance, right now we know that the case in hand on the medical parole is that the medical officers making up the medical parole board found that Zuma is fit and healthy enough to actually serve the sentence that is going to serve 15-month sentence comfortably in jail without any need for extra attention and extra help from anybody. So that is the fact of the situation. So if you are fit, you don't need to actually apply for medical parole in any capacity whatsoever. But that is not being discussed in terms of the objective scientific facts. All sorts of far-fetched stories are being introduced into the discussion, including the threat of another looting spree, another sabotage, another insurrection, all sorts of things, which are irrelevant to a medical fight.
So, Mr. Swana, then what do you make of the Correctional Services Department in and itself saying that it's coming to the fore, despite the fact that Arthur Fraser is no longer the commissioner and there's now a new captain in this particular ship? So are you saying that possibly they could also be playing politics?
There is no question about them playing politics, more especially if you read the judgment itself. We must remember that even the resignation of Cronje at the NPA recently told us that, number one, there are people who are sponsoring state capture in the state, in the NPA. And I want to believe today there are people who are continuing to pursue the agenda of state capture within the correctional services, to the point that Arthur Fraser was just one of them. He was not everybody. So in the security cluster right now, the security cluster in its entirety, there are agents of state capture, there are agents of the RT faction, and all sorts of other criminal gangs that are operating there, that are hindering justice from being implemented.
Now, we're almost out of time. In 30 seconds, let's talk about, we saw the local government elections come, a very difficult time for the ANC, and they even conceded that it was not an easy election. I wonder then, given the developments around the former president and looking at KwaZulu-Natal and what we've seen unfold post the local government elections, do you think that any development there could eat away the support of the governing party in that province?
Yes, I think the support of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is going to be eaten away. And I think that the resurrection of the IFP, Inkatha Freedom Party, is a major factor. And the IFP, with the mistakes that the ANC continues to make, even around Jacob Zuma, around Tutuzane Zuma and other such developments, is going to make sure that the IFP in particular is on the rise, as well as the DA to a certain degree.
I wish we had more time to talk about, your last point around the former President Jacob Zuma's son and that election at that Newlands East branch. In fact, I'm told I still have just a bit of time to ask you. Thank you to the guys in the control room. But let's talk about that. I mean, we saw the former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane, being elected a leader of a branch. Some, when you read the Sunday Times today, are of the view that the RET faction is actually looking to him to then be in a good position now to contest the leadership of the eThekwini. And we know eThekwini is embattled. Is he in a good standing now?
Yeah, politically, he may not be in a good standing morally and otherwise, but certainly politically is in a very good shape, bearing in mind that in those places like that, it is money and lobbying at ground level, not popular support, that actually wins you the chairpersonship or any senior position in a region. So I think Tutuzane is very well placed to do very well in Equity.
And so how much of that is also going to further play into some of what we've seen as tensions in that particular region? Because eThekwini really is one that has its own politics that we can take a full day to unpack.
Yes, it's going to be tough. There was the fact that Jacob Zuma played a big role in returning the councillors, the ANC councillors, to power in eThekwini, will boost the fortunes of Tutuzane. But whether that idea of a dynasty, a Zuma dynasty, and if you compare it to Buthelezi, Buthelezi is a legend by himself, but he doesn't have a son that is following him in his footsteps. Zuma is starting a new trend whereby you develop a personality cult, and then you pass it to your son and your family, your daughters, and everybody gets mixed up in this and they are involved. So that is going to, it's a new dynamic all by itself. And it's going to probably create more divisions in the ANC, because the Secretary General of the ANC in KZN is trying to modernize the ANC, if you look at it. But I think it's going to have an uphill battle now with people like Tutuzane entering the fray.
Now, what does this then mean? I mean, I know that she still has legal issues behind her. She still has quite a lot that she needs to deal with, even within the ANC, Sandile Swana. But where does this place her? Because, if the article by the Sunday Times is anything to go by, it looks like those who were pinning their hopes on her returning as the chair of eThekwini are pinning them on Duduzane. But have we seen the last of Ms. Swana?
No, you must remember that if I were to use the most direct language, this is a protection racket. So if you are saying that you are getting caught, you pass the ball to Tutuzane, to a person who's relatively clean, to then be the enforcer of all measures of possible protection around yourself, against prosecution, against all sorts of things. So there is no worry. I mean, the entrance of Tutuzane favors Gumede quite well, because his job is to protect and promote her in various ways.
It's going to be an interesting time going into next year's conference. I tell you, it doesn't feel like this is the last time you and I speak about this. It really looks like it's going to heat up in the lead up to December. Thank you so much to you for your time this afternoon. Do appreciate your insights, and thank you to the team in the control room for giving us a little bit more time. That was political analyst Sandile Swana. Let's take a look now at how things are.